Welcome to HFY Sci-fi channel. Don't forget to subscribe and explore. Cold light stained the corridor walls, humming faintly through panels overdue for recalibration. No footstep, no wind. Just the outpost's silence breathing through metal seams and distant coolant lines. A pulse tripped the proximity alarm. He didn't move at first. Just watched the red indicator flare on the console, not blinking. Not right away. External sensors had been dead for weeks. Solar dust again, clogging the outer array, but motion at this hour felt less like intrusion and more like an error in judgment. Maybe he'd forgotten a maintenance drone. Maybe a solar flare interfered with the inputs again. The signal repeated. Closer. He pulled himself upright, boots scraping dry against the reinforced plating, each step towards the viewing port measured, involuntary. Outside, nothing moved. No footprints marked the powdery regolith curling just beyond the shielded dome. But there, by the outer airlock, a shape leaned into the station's edge. Small. Wrap. Fill. No wind blew this high above the surface, and no crew drop was scheduled. He checked again. No ship. No signatures. The object at the hatch hadn't been there during his last rotation through the diagnostics panel. Pressure slid against his chest. He keyed the override. Airlock sequence engaged with a low churn. Gears hissed like something hesitant to open. He lowered his mask from the wall and armed the thermal barriers. Atmosphere inside would kill anything not sealed. Yet the form hadn't moved. No shiver. No twitch. Just sat against the hatch like someone had placed it there and stepped away forever. The outer door opened. Color, soft, pulsing, leaked from the folds of what looked like synthetic foil. Thin layers, metallic blue, cradled something breathing, barely. The glow came from within. Not mechanical. Not artificial. Skin? Or something fused with skin. He reached forward. No resistance. Heat radiated gently, not like plasma, more like body temperature on the edge of collapse. Fingers brushed the edge of a limb. Not human. Not reptilian. Smooth, jointed strangely, with ridges he couldn't immediately name. A murmur, wet, uneven, escaped from under the blanket. No words, just effort. The infant's eyes were open. No whites. No pupils. Just a dim light floating where focus should live. He didn't speak. Not aloud. Not to it. Instead, his grip slid under the tiny frame, lifting with practiced caution. Lighter than it looked. Too light. Skin shimmered against his suit sleeve, leaving a faint sheen like oil suspended in gel. Before he could turn, a thud rattled the frame. Movement on the outer cam. Something tall staggered into view, dragging one foot, upper limbs loose at odd angles. Not like injury. Like orientation didn't register. Skin reflected the airlock's emergency light. Silver, not polished, not artificial, something fluid beneath a cracked surface. No clothes. No armor. Just strands of something tangled around shoulders and legs, torn and scorched. Her mouth opened before she reached the threshold. Sounds tumbled out, words bent wrong. A language missing its edges, vowels spilling into themselves. Not rage. Not command. Something else. A cry misfired from inside a mind no longer shaped for speech. Eyes locked on the child in his arms. She took one more step. Knees gave. Arms hung limp at her sides, hands twitching once before curling into themselves. No scream. No gasp. Just air leaving lungs unused to oxygen this thin. She hit the ground, cheek pressed to steel, lips parted as if she'd been trying to say something just before the lights in her head cut out. The child didn't make a sound. Behind sealed doors, the air receded again. Nothing outside but frost on metal and the question of why she'd carried that baby across dead space just to drop it here. He carried the infant through the decompression corridor, boots pressing into a floor that no longer felt familiar. Metal walls seemed thinner. Air tasted different. Inside the medbay, lights adjusted too slowly, casting long shadows over the diagnostic table. He cleared it with one swipe, scattering tools and a datapad onto the ground. No scream. No motion. Just the faint pulse beneath translucent skin. Not heat, not exactly, more like a rhythm, trapped under dermal layers too smooth to be called flesh. His scanner couldn't lock onto vitals. Temperature, undetectable. Blood pressure, null. Oxygen levels, unreadable. Every diagnostic returned blank or unreadable. Wrong code. Wrong species. Wrong design. He tried again. Recalibrated. Slowed the sweep to its lowest range. No use. The infant twitched once. No cry. No cough. Limbs shifted as if floating through syrup. Its chest rose fractionally, then paused. He dropped the scanner and grabbed a thermal stabilizer from the wall. It wasn't calibrated for this physiology, but leaving it untouched felt worse. He placed it beneath the infant's back, pressed the activation stud, and watched the surface warm to a safe range. No reaction. 5 seconds passed. Then 8. A small noise. Wet. Shallow. Like breath remembered only halfway. He exhaled without realizing he'd stopped. With 2 fingers, he adjusted the infant's head. The eyes had not closed. They stared, motionless, colorless, lit from inside by something too faint to trace. Not reflection. Not reaction. Something internal, alive, but trapped under confusion and pressure and something else he couldn't yet name. His hands moved on instinct, patching cables, aligning sensors, mixing compounds he barely believed would help. Oxygen-enriched microgel, electrolytic enhancers, protein structures broken down from emergency rations. He didn't know what this body needed, but he built an approximation of nurture with what he had. No cries. No feedback. Just silence. The console blinked once. Unfamiliar data crawled across the top edge of the monitor. Symbols, not characters. Rhythm-based. Pulse-aligned. He stared at the patterns. Not random. Time. 4 long pauses, 1 short burst, a compression in spacing, then the sequence reset. Again. Again. It wasn't a glitch. He pressed record. More symbols appeared. The signal wasn't machine-born. The waveform didn't originate from the console. It was coming from the infant. He scanned again, this time through electromagnetic bands not used for diagnostic. Low-end neural frequencies returned something faint. Not brainwaves. Not exactly. More like a code layered into the body's own internal electrical hum. The sequence repeated. He slowed the monitor's playback. Split the signal into segments. Each repetition matched the last, with minute variations, like a stutter trying to hold its place in line. The variation wasn't random. It was linguistic. It had structure. The infant wasn't dying. It was calling. He cross-referenced signal structure with the station's archived language matrices. Nothing matched directly, but one algorithm flagged similarities to a defunct military cipher used for compressed distress calls during long-range signal blackout. The child wasn't speaking. It was sending. Somewhere past the warmth he'd provided, beyond the layered mesh stabilizer and fluid-coated sensors, this infant had been trying to transmit a message from inside its own nervous system. Not to him. To someone else. He reached for the comms terminal. Long-range antenna offline. Routine maintenance had left the dish half-disabled. He'd meant to fix it that morning but hadn't left his bunk. Short-range comms still functional. He began to route the message through the emergency beacon relay. Auto-compression engaged. The signal filtered, processed, scrambled. An alert triggered mid-transmission. Unauthorized waveform detected. He froze. Security protocols launched automatically, sweeping the signal for known threat vectors. Halfway through, the screen blanked. An override initiated itself. Locked him out. Someone, or something, had recognized the pattern. It wasn't just a baby. It was a flag. And that woman, whatever she had been, hadn't left it here by mistake. She'd brought it to him, knowing something would hear. Not him. Something else. Something further out. Possibly coming. His hand hovered over the kill switch. The baby shivered again. Skin pulsed a different color this time, cooler, softer. He didn't cut the line. He opened a second channel and began recording the infant directly. Not the message. Not the waveform. Everything. Because nothing here was accidental. Nothing here had arrived without purpose. And someone was already listening. She didn't move for hours. Body sprawled on the thermal mat, limbs bent at wrong angles as though memory still argued with anatomy. The wounds across her ribcage had closed without treatment. Not scabbed, sealed, tight, tissue drawn together like memory folding in on itself. No scar, no residue. As if pain refused to leave any mark it couldn't explain. Her eyelids twitched first. One hand jerked upward, palm cupped loosely, as if catching something invisible. Fingers flexed. Closed around nothing. Opened again. No direction behind the movement. No awareness. Just instinct stored too long and triggered by temperature. The mouth opened. Air slipped past her teeth in syllables that tangled before forming. No grammar. No pause. Words pressed into one another without breath. Sounds tumbled out in broken loops, curling at the edges like transmission errors. She repeated one phrase 3 times. Pause. Repeated it backward. A sharp click. Then silence. She bolted upright. The chair behind her tipped. She didn't see it. Eyes stared across the room toward the infant station, though nothing in her gaze suggested recognition. The iris adjusted, contracting with light sensitivity, but the pupils stayed wide. Too wide. Not stunned. Not aware. Something between the two, stretched thin. One leg kicked out. Bare foot dragged metal. She pivoted sharply to the right, nearly toppling a terminal unit bolted to the floor. Her shoulders were too high. Tension sat across them like weight stitched into skin. She turned toward the exit. Lock code had been sealed. She didn't try the panel. Instead, both hands slapped the wall beside it, fingers splayed, tracing shapes into the surface like a blind woman reading instructions carved into memory. Symbols came again. Shorter this time. A different rhythm. He watched from across the corridor, unmoving. The next outburst came without warning. She spun, crouched low, and lunged toward the infant's pod, fast, violent, but imprecise. Not attack. More like impulse without aim. His body moved before his brain caught up. He placed himself between them. Her palm struck his chest. No push. No follow-through. Just contact. She stopped. Eyes remained fixed past him, locked on the faint glow from the pod's surface. Lips parted. One word escaped. It held shape. Almost familiar. Then her entire body jerked back, arms raised, mouth opening wider than it should have allowed. A sound emerged, not a scream. Not pain. A harmonic burst of mismatched frequencies compressed into one breath. It filled the corridor like a warning issued from something no longer built to warn. She collapsed again. No fall. No bracing. Legs folded, spine dropped against the cold paneling, her head thudded softly to the side. Eyes open. Still breathing. He sealed the corridor. Manual override on every hatch. Emergency lockdown sequence re-engaged, isolating her from the control deck. Motion sensors realigned. Visual monitors adjusted to track her without delay. Every automated system placed on a new priority queue. She would not move again without it being logged. But the problem wasn't movement. It was language, or the thing inside her trying to fake it. She whispered while unconscious. Low murmurs, too low for human registers. A waveform recorder picked up traces. Layered audio overlapping in real time, as if two minds spoke through one throat. The timing was off. Delay between syllables. Like conflict between source and output. No sign of external infection. No parasitic intrusion. Just a body healing too fast while the mind buckled in place. He ran diagnostics again. Scanned for pressure damage, chemical imbalance, neural misfire. Every medical test returned false or incomplete. The system didn't know what she was. Therefore, it couldn't know how broken she had become. She woke once more. This time slower. No sound. No motion. Just a shift in posture. Shoulders loosened. arms drawn into her chest, fetal-like. One eye followed the sound of ventilation. The other remained fixed on nothing. He didn't approach. Not fear. Not caution. Something deeper. Something closer to all warped by confusion. She muttered a name. Not his. He looked down at the security feed. Her vitals fluctuated again. Skin temperature dropped, rose, dropped again. Speech patterns loop. Same phrase repeated every 11 seconds. A minor variation on the fourth loop. Then reset. Neural degradation wasn't random. It was purposeful. Something had rewired itself into her cognition, something recursive. He didn't know whether she could be saved or whether she had already been replaced. He stayed by the console until the room dimmed again, and her body folded back into stillness, twitching at the corners without meaning. The child never cried. Thin tubes ran from the synthesizer into a thermal regulator, humming too loud for comfort. Nutrient mix hovered at safe levels, pH balanced, viscosity adjusted to mimic human milk. He lifted the feeder gently, held it beneath the infant's mouth. No reaction. The glow under its skin dimmed slightly. He repositioned the nozzle. Waited. Nothing. One droplet formed at the tip. Touched the lips. Still no response. Mouth remained closed, limbs motionless. Not asleep. Not resisting. Just absent. Like hunger had already been forgotten. He altered the blend. Reduced the sodium. Increased glucose by fractional unit. Ran the feed again. Still nothing. 17 variations in under 3 hours. Different thermal profiles. Different delivery angles. No change. Not even a swallow. Its chest rose, fell. Barely. His hands tightened around the dispenser, knuckles pale. The mixture was viable. Sterile. Precise. Every measure matched calculated tolerance for neonatal organisms within a 20% deviation. But this body had never been part of those metrics. He sat back, exhaled tight. Listened. A faint series of pulses came from the child's side. Not breath. Not movement. A sound. Short bursts. Low frequency. Too rhythmic for coincidence. He leaned closer. The sound repeated. Same timing. Same tonal dip at the end. It wasn't coming from the mouth. It came from beneath the ribcage, near the lower sternum. The pulse originated from somewhere within the torso. Not mechanical. Biological. A message. He watched it again. 3 long, 2 short. A pause. 3 long, 2 short. Each cycle ended in a low harmonic shift, barely perceptible to unaided hearing. He recorded it. Played it back. No change. On impulse, he mimicked the sound with his own breath. The infant twitched. No reaction in the eyes, but the chest lifted more fully. Limbs stirred. The glow intensified. He repeated the pattern again, this time softer, longer. One hand raised, fingers curling slowly. He adjusted the pitch. Matched the tonal drop more carefully. The mouth opened. Not wide. Not urgent. Just enough for the next breath to sound wetter, more alive. He moved quickly. Reattached the feeder. Watched the lips touch the surface. One drop disappeared. Then another. No suction. No draw. Just tiny movements. Bare, uncertain, at the corners of the mouth, as if swallowing by reflex that hadn't been used in days. He kept mimicking the sound. Breath against the pod wall. Soft rhythm, exact timing. He didn't stop. The glow under the skin began to pulse with it. 10 minutes passed before the entire feeder emptied. The infant's body slackened. He stood without speaking. Cleaned the lines. Adjusted the ambient temperature. Dropped the lighting by 10%. Checked vital signs again. Still unreadable. But the pulse had changed. No longer a call. Not entirely. It was alignment. He took a sample from the feeder tip. Analyzed it. Traces of metabolic residue unique to the ingested compound, now mapped to a biochemical range not previously indexed. He needed a better match. He pulled the blood panel from earlier, the one taken when the mother's skin tore during her first collapse. He isolated cellular fragments. Not human. Not fully alien. Something hybridized. Protein chains bound to carbon structures in a way that resisted decay. He mapped the amino profile, loaded it into the synthesizer's algorithm, cross-referenced the data against the sample from the feeder residue. Close but not exact. He rewrote the code manually. Ran 3 test batches. The 4th smelled like hot stone after rain. Slight metallic scent. Faintly sweet. The infant drank without resistance. This time, the mouth stayed open after the first drop. Jaw shifted with intention. Tongue curled under the fluid. A breath, then another. No sound. Just motion. Consumption without hesitation. He stayed by the pod for 43 minutes. The eyes finally closed. It slept. Not collapsed. Not unconscious. Slept. No signals followed. No pulse transmission. Just silence. He turned the room lights off. Sat against the wall. Watched the shape beneath the thermal layer rise and fall in rhythm. He had no word for what he felt. Nothing specific. Only the absence of waiting. Only the quiet. Only the sense that for the first time since the airlock opened, something had accepted its place here. If only for one night. She blinked at movement but never turned her head. The infant stirred beneath its covering and her gaze slid toward it without command. Muscles shifted under silver skin, fragile and hesitant. Hands clenched, released. Not from pain. Not reflex. Her body reached for something memory hadn't yet granted permission to touch. The pod's light pulsed faintly. She responded with a tilt of her head. Lips parted. A noise rose, unformed, collapsed midway through its shape. No words, only the rhythm of intent without grammar. She didn't cry out. She didn't smile. Her hand rose halfway, hovered in the air between them, fingers trembling against gravity as though contact might break what little structure remained in her mind. The baby didn't react. Asleep again. Stillness radiated outward like warmth in reverse. He remained outside the boundary, unmoving. A presence behind reinforced glass. Nothing that could frighten or be misread. His eyes followed her hands. Her posture. The timing of her breath. She tilted forward once, caught herself, leaned back. Movement slowed. Less frantic. Less raw. A second day passed. He noticed the change in her shoulders. No longer pulled up into the neck. Less strain behind the jawline. She sat longer without shaking. Still not speaking. Still lost in sounds that never met at their ends. During one routine adjustment to the infant's temperature field, she stood without prompting. Took 2 steps forward. Her palm pressed against the pod's edge. The light shifted beneath her touch, not reacting, but aligning. She didn't remove her hand. Instead, the opposite arm raised slowly, mirroring a motion she had seen days before. Fingers curled inward. Same pattern he used when adjusting his visor. Precise. Measured. Mimicked. He repeated the movement, slower this time. She followed again. He touched his chest. Paused. Brought his hand outward, palm open. She copied that too. Not exactly. The hand didn't fully open. She stopped just before full extension, as if old restraint pulled the gesture short. But her eyes stayed fixed on his. Not through him. On him. He took a step forward. She didn't retreat. He activated the interface. Low-light emitters painted symbols into the air between them. No language. Just shapes. Simplicity reduced to movement. A single line turning into a curve. A circle folding into itself. A triangle opening sideways. She watched each without blinking. The symbols cycled. He repeated one gesture slowly, 2 fingers touching the center of the display. The glyph brightened. She stared. The next sequence loaded. 3 symbols appeared. One glowed in pale gold, softer than the others. He tapped it again. No sound. No signal. Just light. He waited. Her hand rose. Not smooth. Not precise. Wrist shook under its own weight. Elbow stiff. Her fingers found the light. Contact. The glyph pulsed once, deep red to warm orange. No alarm. No trigger. Just acknowledgement. The symbol remained active. She pulled her hand back, eyes still locked on the panel. He reloaded the sequence. Same 3 symbols. 1 pulsing. 2 dark. Her hand reached again. Same symbol. Same light. He changed the position. Moved it to the top corner. Altered the orientation. She found it again. Each time. No confusion. He isolated it. The symbol translated to one meaning in his original mapping: safe. Nothing else. She touched it 5 more times before her hands dropped to her lap. He left the interface active. Her head lowered against the pod's side. No speech. No effort. Just her presence, resting beside the infant as the glyph hovered quietly in the air. He sat across from her, just beyond the terminal screen. One thought looping in silence. She knew what it meant to be safe. And somehow, she had remembered enough to choose it. Dust clung to the sealant seams, coating the relay's outer panel in a dull rust-colored film. He worked the manual override by touch, gloved fingers slipping across corroded clasps not designed for repair. The station had drifted off-grid months ago. No signal. No auto-ping. No crew. Just black status tags and a faint radiation leak flagged by orbital sweepers but never prioritized. Inside, the atmosphere clung thick with ozone. Systems offline. Lights dead. Only the auxiliary core still breathing, barely. He powered the backup diagnostic node. Half the interface screen blinked, cracked beneath the surface. Data fragments scrolled without command, incomplete registry stamps trailing blank headers. Communication logs severed. Language modules stripped. He bypassed the kernel and went directly for stored frequencies. What came through didn't match human patterns. A low thrum. Not audio. Compression pulses. 3 sharp bands. 2 short. Pause. Repeat. No modulation. No carrier ID. Not directional. Not responsive. Pure emission. He logged the waveform. Cross-checked the base coding. Format untraceable. No known architecture. Yet something in the cadence struck a shape into the edges of memory. He scanned again, this time pulling from dormant sectors. The signal wasn't just present. It had been here for longer than the station's failure report claimed. Embedded beneath comm logs. Masked as thermal bleed. Layered behind the power draw report. Every 10 minutes, it shifted by a fraction of a second. Not random. Incremental. Not a broadcast. A search. He copied the packet. Secured a backup. Detached the receiver module manually. No uplink. No ping. No trace route. The signal followed no call. It simply asked. Once. Again. Again. He left the station with the weight of its silence pressed between his shoulder blades. The outpost lights flared into low brightness as he docked. Auto-sanitizers hissed to life. Systems adjusted for arrival. Temperature rebalanced. Inside, the child slept. No movement. No signal. No anomaly. But the woman stood beside the bulkhead with both hands pressed against the wall. Her palms dragged slowly down the surface. Skin left no residue. No sweat. Just dry contact and motion. Between her fingers, smears had formed. He leaned closer. Not dirt. Not random. Patterns. Not lines. Shape. She'd used the composite dust that built up during filtration cycles, fine, dark, almost magnetic. She had gathered it in her nails and pressed it into the wall in soft strokes. 7 symbols. Not decorative. Not expression. Each shape matched a visual cipher embedded in the signal's encryption loop. Not perfectly. Not stylized. Function. He brought the waveform up beside the images. The glyphs matched. She had drawn them with closed eyes. Still sleeping. Her mouth moved. No words. Only motion. A breath too long. A pause too short. Vocal cords shivered with the edge of syllables that carried no sound. She pressed her forehead against the wall. He didn't wake her. Instead, he wiped one symbol clean. Waited. Her fingers returned to the space. Traced it again. Same proportions. Same angles. The same signal had imprinted itself into muscle memory. She wasn't echoing something she'd heard. She was responding to something she'd once known. Not forgotten. Buried. Something outside had sent a message. And something inside her had never stopped preparing for the answer. He waited until her breath slowed. Not asleep. Not confused. Stillness held with intent. The infant remained within reach, wrapped against a thermal layer tuned to her body's readout. 4 hours she hadn't moved beyond that proximity. Proximity mattered. The salvaged neural frame came from a downed survey rig, scavenged in silence 2 sectors north. He stripped it down, rewired the interface to bypass pain feedback, recalibrated the core to accommodate unknown neurophysiology. No testing. No blueprint. Only intuition sharpened by proximity to failure. He placed the receiver just beneath her neck, beneath the line of bone where scar tissue once pulsed under skin. It attached without resistance. Her spine arched slightly. No noise escaped her mouth. Muscles flexed. Jaw locked. Her eyes remained open, tracking something that had not yet happened. The signal dampener reduced local EM readings by 60%. Without external noise, the cortical sync began. Color shifted across her face. Not expression. Reaction. He adjusted the gain. Shifted the modulation. The tremors in her hands ceased. She turned her face to the child. Mouth opened. A shape formed on her lips. Not sound. Shape. He saw it once before, in the transmission. She reached out. He let her touch the infant's arm. No resistance. The child's skin glowed slightly beneath her fingers. Her pupils contracted. A word came. Unbroken. Clear. Not in his language, but shaped with grammar. Formed with breath. Her head tilted back. Eyes closed. She spoke again. Slower. He translated fragments in real time. Parsed against archived records from non-terrestrial linguistic. Only partial matches. She spoke of skyfall. Of home burned. Of something called convergence. Her voice caught on the next word. Broke. Regathered. Hybrid. She pointed at the infant. Not like her. Not like them. Made. Not born. Patterned after their line but changed. Stripped of ancestral code. Rewritten at root level. A correction. No nation permitted its creation. No mother had carried one before. The womb used was artificial, stolen from repurposed gestation tanks meant for biomass development. She had severed her own neural feed to shield it from detection. They hunted her anyway. She had run through breach corridors not designed for retreat. Broken through atmospheric filtration fields that tore skin from bone. What carried her here wasn't survival. It was rupture. She hadn't intended to make it. The child wasn't supposed to last beyond first breath. He asked her name. She paused. Too long. As if the answer no longer mattered. She touched the interface hovering between them. Pressed the glyph he'd once shown her. Safe. Her lips shaped a new word. Not in his tongue. But the meaning landed. First. She said it again. Her body shook as memory completed itself. Eyes swelled with something too ancient to name. The child moved in its sleep. No signal. No code. Only warmth reaching for warmth. She wept without sound. Without ceremony. He powered down the frame slowly. Her eyes remained open. No more loops. No more fragments. Only breath. And the shape of something terrible behind it. She hadn't been broken. She had been made to forget. The transmission came without handshake. No hailing signature. No buffer. Just raw command line injection across the auxiliary band. It bypassed his encryption wall like it had been designed for his system alone. Authorization tag matched Directorate Patrol 12. No orbit file. No registry check. They were already nearby when they called. Unknown biosignatures had pinged their sweep. Inconclusive, they said. Anomaly flagged. Safety protocol required immediate inspection. He was instructed to prepare the station for boarding. He answered with a 1-minute delay. Ran a decoy diagnostic. flagged a fabricated airlock malfunction, logged a false positive on carbon monoxide imbalance, triggered the auto-clean subroutine to buy 4 more minutes. Internal sensors caught the ship's approach. No lights, no transmission repeat. They didn't ask for confirmation, didn't wait for a response, just drifted closer like a decision already made. He pulled up the surveillance feed. She had not moved. One arm rested across the infant's side. Head bowed, not asleep, watching the floor. One hand flexed slowly against the bedding, forming a circle with her thumb and second finger. A gesture he'd never taught. A shape not recorded in her signal interactions. Repetition born not of habit, but memory trying to surface. She lifted her head, looked at him through the camera. No plea, no fear. Expectation. As if she had lived this moment before. As if the same eyes had failed her once already. He accessed the mainline interface. Security logs showed the specimen records queued for automated transfer. Standard policy. Any unauthorized biological presence flagged during sweep would be routed directly to command archives for analysis. No trial. No consent. Just relocation and silence. He cleared the logs. Wiped the metadata chain. Disabled beacon sync. Hard-coded a terminal loop into the biosignal detection relay. They would see heat. They would see motion. They would not see them. His hands moved fast across the command console. Overrode autodock. Cancelled boarding queue. Locked every airlock on internal override. Rewritten access codes required vocal verification he had never used before. He triggered internal dampeners. Killed external transmission lines. Masked power readings to simulate emergency hibernation. Outside, the patrol ship paused. They sent no second message. He looked at the monitor one last time. Her body now curled around the child. One eye on him. Breath shallow. Deliberate. No panic. No collapse. Just watching. Not waiting. Trust was not spoken aloud. She offered it in silence, as though she'd known all along that when the decision arrived, it wouldn't come from duty or from fear. It would come from proximity, from being the only one who had heard her speak clearly. He cut power to the exterior sensors. They weren't leaving. Not by airlock. Not by order. Not alive, if that's what it came to. He stood alone at the primary systems console, hands motionless above the kill sequence. Every status light glowed clean. Power within limits. Internal oxygen levels held. Reactor stable. All systems green. Too green. He triggered the breach alarm manually. External sensor logs were overwritten to reflect rapid depressurization at Quadrant 2, followed by a cascade collapse of internal ballast support. A failure no engineer should have missed. A death sentence that could only point to negligence. He sent the death signal on an emergency channel buried deep inside archival traffic lanes. An ancient frequency barely used. The kind of line that didn't demand confirmation, only finality. Final environmental reading. Uninhabitable. 3 souls lost. He closed the channel. Below deck, they waited. She had dressed herself in a thermal wrap torn from a storage panel. No words had passed between them. No nods. No handshake. She held the child against her hip as though it had always belonged there. The light beneath the infant's skin pulsed slow, low, but sure. Not warning. Not fear. Just life preserved. He led them through access corridors long stripped of purpose. Subfloor passageways layered in insulation foam, crawling with half-cooled piping and dust older than the outpost itself. No navigation markers. No sound. 57 meters down, the wall gave way to a sealed pressure hatch from a pre-mining operation. Terraforming shelter. Originally built to house engineers during soil conditioning, long since abandoned when surface harvesting proved easier. He cracked the seal. Air hissed outward, dry and warm. Still breathable. Inside, the chamber yawned wide with functional gravity pads and water storage tanks never fully drained. The lights didn't work. He didn't turn them on. He preferred the dark. She crossed the threshold first. Her bare foot touched the floor with hesitation, but not doubt. The infant stirred in her arms. He sealed the hatch behind them. No signal left the chamber. He scavenged old nutrient filters from the storage bay. Rewired an old thermal lamp for growing algae patches still stored in vacuum-sealed cylinders. The child's biochemistry responded well to those strains. The feeding unit ran without error. For the first time, he didn't need to stay close for the child to sleep. She began speaking in fragments again, but not like before. No loops. No nonsense. Only short clusters of memory, words shaped without struggle. He recorded each one. Translated when possible. Many made no sense. One did. Begin. She used it 3 times in one day. Once while watching the child crawl toward the wall. Once while arranging old mineral crates into makeshift bedding. Once while standing beside him, her hand resting lightly on his forearm as if weighing whether the shape of him might belong to this place too. He built no outpost markers. Filed no logs. Submitted no surveys. There were no titles left for what this was. Only space. Only presence. Only the sound of breath filling a chamber that no longer asked to be found.